You didn't set out to become the most dangerous man in the room. You set out to be the best. You graduated top of your class at Harvard Law. Every white shoe firm on Wall Street sent offers. Sullivan and Cromwell, Cravath, Skadden, Davis Polk. You took the one with the highest number at the bottom of the letter, the one with offices on the 47th floor of a tower that scraped the clouds above Midtown Manhattan. You were 26 years old, and you believed, genuinely believed, that the law was something sacred, that it protected people, that it stood between order and chaos, that the years of sacrifice, the debt, the sleepless nights, the relationships you let die on the altar of ambition were going to mean something in the end. You were wrong, but you didn't know that yet. The first year was grunt work. Document review in rooms that smelled like recycled air and printer toner. Billing 2,200 hours, more than most people work in 2 years, and feeling proud of it. You were a cog. But it was a very expensive, very powerful machine, and being a cog in it still paid better than anything any of your law school peers had ever imagined. The first case that should have broken you involved a pharmaceutical company, one of the 10 largest in the world. They manufactured a blood pressure medication that they knew, through their own internal studies, signed off by their own scientists, caused fatal cardiac events in patients over 65. Not occasionally, systematically. They knew it for 4 years before the FDA found out. Your job was to help them structure the settlement agreements so they could pay out $2 billion without ever admitting liability. 6 words that changed everything, without ever admitting liability. You spent 8 months reading internal emails that made your stomach turn. Executives using the phrase acceptable casualty rate as casually as if they were discussing inventory levels. Scientists being threatened with termination unless they modified their data submissions. Marketing teams who had deliberately targeted elderly patients in assisted living facilities, not because those patients needed the drug most, but because they were statistically the most likely to die before any lawsuit could reach a courtroom. There was a slide deck. Somebody made a slide deck about it. A PowerPoint presentation. That detail still visits you sometimes when the scotch runs low. The company paid $2 billion. They made $30 billion in profit from that drug. Nobody went to prison. Not one executive, not one scientist who falsified data, not one marketing director who greenlit the targeting strategy. The lead executives received severance packages that would make a Fortune 500 CEO blush. You received a bonus that paid off every cent of your student debt. You told yourself this was simply how the system operated. You told yourself you were just a lawyer. You were not wrong. And you were not just a lawyer. Both of those things were true at the same time. By year 5, you made partner. By year 7, you had a specialty. Not mergers, not IP. Your specialty was the thing that never gets a name in law review articles or spoken about at bar association dinners. You fixed problems, specifically problems that belonged to people with more money than God and more to lose than most countries. People who had spent their entire lives building walls of privilege so thick that ordinary consequences simply couldn't reach them, until they did. And when they did, they called you. A Silicon Valley founder whose son killed 2 people in a DUI crash on a county road in Marin. The family had money, but money alone doesn't make witnesses forget what they saw. You made them reconsider, not with threats. You were always careful about that. but with the subtle art of making cooperation feel like the only reasonable choice. The witnesses developed memory problems. The case was resolved with a settlement that included ironclad confidentiality provisions. A hedge fund titan, one of the 20 wealthiest men in America, whose wife of 18 years discovered he had maintained a second family in Connecticut for 9 years. 2 children she didn't know existed. You negotiated an NDA so airtight that she couldn't discuss it with her therapist without risking a 7-figure penalty. She got her money. He got his silence. You got a fee that would have paid for a small building. A Manhattan real estate mogul whose company had been systematically defrauding pension funds, teachers' retirement accounts, firefighters' retirement accounts for 11 consecutive years. The scheme involved 12 shell companies, 3 offshore jurisdictions, and a compliance officer who had raised concerns twice in writing and been quietly removed both times. You found a fall guy, a mid-level CFO who agreed to plead guilty to a reduced set of charges in exchange for a trust fund established for his 3 children, a minimum security facility in Connecticut, tennis courts, not concrete, and the understanding that his cooperation ended precisely where it needed to end. You weren't a lawyer anymore. You were something the law doesn't have a name for, because naming it would require acknowledging that it exists. The paranoia started early, though you didn't recognize it as paranoia at first. You thought of it as professional caution. You started keeping notes, not just for the files. Everyone keeps notes for the files, but private records, encrypted, backed up to servers you controlled personally, not the firm's systems. Insurance, you called it, because you had already watched what happened to 2 colleagues who knew too much and didn't protect themselves. One had a heart attack at 51 on a hiking trail. The medical examiner ruled it natural. The other developed a drug problem, conveniently, right before he was scheduled to testify before a grand jury, and his career and credibility evaporated at precisely the moment they were most needed. You were not going to be either of those men the first time a client showed you something that genuinely shook you. The first time you felt the floor shift under what you thought was solid professional footing. You were in a penthouse on the Upper West Side, looking out over Central Park at 2 in the morning. The client was a media mogul. Newspapers, cable networks, digital platforms, a man whose face appeared on magazine covers alongside the words "most powerful" on a near annual basis, a man who had shaped the information diet of hundreds of millions of people. He was being blackmailed. The material involved minors. He slid a folder across the marble table without looking at you. You didn't open it. You didn't need to. You understood with complete clarity what he was asking. Make it disappear. Make the blackmailer disappear. Make sure no one ever traces any of it back to him. Make sure the world never knows. You should have stood up and walked out. You should have called the FBI from the elevator. Every molecule of what remained of the person you had been before law school told you what you needed to do in that moment. Instead, you asked for your retainer. $3 million, non-refundable, transferred by end of business the following day. He didn't blink. He didn't hesitate. He didn't negotiate. And that instant, reflexive, seasoned non-reaction told you everything about how many times he had been in this room before, how many lawyers, how many envelopes, how many problems that had simply ceased to exist. The problem disappeared within 3 weeks. You chose not to know the details. What you know is this: from that moment forward, you held something over one of the most powerful men on the eastern seaboard. Something real, something provable, and leverage, real leverage, the kind that makes powerful men careful, is the only currency that truly matters in the world you had chosen to inhabit. You are 58 years old now. You have a vault, not a single vault, a network. Encrypted drives distributed across servers in 14 countries. Backup systems with automatic fail-safes. A dead man's switch. A protocol you built yourself with no external assistance over the course of 2 years. That activates if you don't check in within 72 hours. If it activates, enough information releases simultaneously into the hands of specific journalists at The Times, The Post, The Guardian, The Financial Times, and 7 other publications, plus federal prosecutors in 3 districts and 2 foreign intelligence services, to send approximately 400 named individuals to prison and destabilize the global financial system in ways that would take years to repair. Inside that vault, everything, every secret you were ever paid to bury, every crime you helped cover, every photograph, recording, financial statement, internal communication, and private message that your clients told you had been destroyed. You kept copies of all of it from the very beginning, because you understood, even before you had anything worth keeping, that information retained is power banked. You have documented evidence against 3 sitting United States senators, 2 state governors, 1 Supreme Court justice, a man whose confirmation hearings you watched on national television while sitting on a USB drive that would have ended his nomination in a single news cycle. You have proof of price-fixing conspiracies among pharmaceutical companies that have collectively contributed to tens of thousands of preventable deaths. You have banking records showing that a globally systemically important financial institution, one whose name appears on buildings, on stadiums, on the jerseys of sports teams, laundered money for a cartel responsible for thousands of murders over 14 years. You know which technology companies sold user data, including the content of private messages, to a foreign intelligence service for 6 consecutive years. You know which hedge fund has been front-running trades using information obtained from a source inside a federal regulatory agency. You know which beloved charitable foundation has been used as a vehicle for moving money to protect a network of men whose crimes against minors have never been prosecuted and never will be, unless someone opens a vault. You know which billionaires are secretly dying, which ones are addicted, which ones have hidden diagnoses from their boards and shareholders in direct violation of securities law, which ones have been managing their own cognitive decline for years while continuing to make decisions that affect millions of people. You know everything. You can prove everything. They all believe you work for them. That is the beautiful, terrible, exquisite irony of what you have built over 3 decades. These men, the senators, and the CEOs, the hedge fund managers who move markets with a single phone call, the media owners who decide what the country will be angry about this week, they think of you as their attorney, their instrument, a very expensive, very discreet, hired hand who exists to serve their interests and protect their secrets. They have not understood what you became. They funded it. They built it, secret by secret, year by year, retainer by retainer. They have been paying you for decades to construct the cage that holds them. The paranoia is relentless now. You sleep 4 hours on a good night. You change communication methods and devices on a rotating schedule so complex it would look clinical to anyone observing from outside. You have dead drops, coded phrases, a network of intermediaries who carry information between you and your remaining clients without knowing who you are or what they're actually transporting. You've prepared protocols for every scenario: arrest, assassination, staged accident, medical emergency. Each has a response plan. Each response plan has redundancies. The redundancies have redundancies. Because you have attended the funerals, you have read the autopsy reports that didn't add up. You have sat in rooms where powerful men discussed, in euphemisms so practiced it sounded almost natural, what needed to happen to someone who had become inconvenient. You know what "we'll handle it" means. You know what "that problem won't be a problem much longer" means. You have heard those phrases and said nothing, because saying nothing was the job. You will not be handled. You have made sure of that. But here is what no one watching you from outside would ever understand. Here is what costs you the sleep that the paranoia has already stolen. Here is what quietly, methodically, without drama or ceremony, is finishing what the years began. You are the loneliest person on earth. No spouse, no children, no person alive who knows your real name attached to your real history, attached to the full shape of everything you've done and everything you've become. Every relationship in your life is a transaction with a clearly defined exit clause. Every person who smiles at you is either a client, an asset, or a potential threat, and you assess which category they belong to before the smile has finished forming. Trust, for you, is not an emotion. It hasn't been for a long time. It is a calculation, a risk assessment, and the calculation almost always returns the same answer. You have homes on 3 continents, each registered to a different shell company, each stocked with enough cash and documents to begin a new life if the architecture collapses. You have gold, physical gold, buried in locations that exist only in your memory. You have $400 million in assets. You have the power to end the careers and the freedom of some of the most powerful people alive. And you cannot remember the last time you sat across from another human being and said something true. You finish your scotch. The city stretches out below you, vast and indifferent and glittering. Somewhere down there, a 26-year-old associate is billing their first 100 hours. They're dreaming about partnership, about the kind of life that seems possible from this height. They believe in something. They still believe in something. They have no idea what waits for them at the end of this road. They have no idea that every case, every client, every dollar comes with a cost that doesn't appear on any invoice. They'll learn. Everyone learns eventually. The question is only what shape the learning takes. One day, maybe this day, maybe not, you are going to open the vault. You are going to send everything to the journalists and the prosecutors and the investigators who have been pulling threads for years without ever finding the one that unravels the whole sweater. You are going to burn it down, not from conscience. Conscience is a luxury you forfeited somewhere around year 12. Not from redemption, That concept left your vocabulary long before conscience did. You are going to do it because it is the only move left on the board, because you spent your entire life accumulating power, and the only thing left that makes you feel anything at all is the thought of using it. The thought of watching the whole rotten, beautiful, self-satisfied architecture collapse under the weight of its own secrets. Watching the most powerful men in the world scramble like rats when the lights come on. Or maybe you won't. Maybe the dead man switch fires before you do. Maybe one of them, the senator, the media mogul, the hedge fund manager you've been bleeding for 11 years, finds the thread you missed despite every precaution. Maybe you just keep going, year after year, collecting secrets and cashing checks until there is nothing left of the person who once walked into a law school believing that the law meant something. Your phone vibrates on the marble table. The screen lights up. Another name you recognize. Another client with another problem. Another secret that needs a keeper. You pick it up because this is what you do. This is all you are. This is the life you built. One compromise at a time. One envelope at a time. One dead man's name at a time. You built it deliberately and skillfully and with full knowledge of what you were doing. You cannot claim otherwise. You will not claim otherwise. The city keeps glittering. The phone keeps ringing. And somewhere in a vault, distributed across 14 countries, the weight of everything you know continues to grow. If this story found something in you, if somewhere in this voice you recognize the shape of a system that works exactly the way it's supposed to for exactly the people it was designed to serve, drop a comment. Tell me what hit you. Tell me what you recognized. And if you want more stories from the world that doesn't talk about itself, the world that pays for silence the way other people pay for air, subscribe. Hit the like button. The next story goes even deeper, into places that have no name in any law review article. You won't want to miss it.